Hello, El Dorado Hills and El Dorado County. We're here with another interview with the District 4 supervisor candidates. And this time we have Gina Posey. Gina, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, everyone.
So, Gina, let's get started with why you decided to run for the Board of Supervisors now and how you think the campaign's going so far.
Okay, thanks, Gary. And thank you for putting on the forums. I think it's important for everyone to get to know us. So I'm Gina
Yes.
Posey, obviously, and I'm running for supervisor because I really love living in El Dorado County. And I just decided I really wanted to give back. I had more to offer. I have the time. My kids are grown. I can devote full time to being a supervisor. I believe I have the experience because I have more than 27 years of high-tech experience, creating strategies, hiring people, managing budgets. I also have a lot of experience locally, which we'll talk about at some point, I'm sure, in this podcast. And I also have the passion. I really want this job. I really love living here. I'm excited to live here. And I think that there is a lot that I can do to help make District 4 better as well as the county. So that's why I'm running.
Awesome. So I know you guys had a debate over the weekend, this just last weekend, and kudos to the three of you for participating in that forum and helping voters get to know you a lot better. I will say that I reached out to Ted Gaines to come on this show as well. I know he didn't come to the podcast. What do you make of one of the candidates not wanting to kind of participate publicly like that?
Well, it's clearly his decision, his choice. I can't speak for him, and I obviously won't. I can only tell you that for me, I think it's really important to talk to as many residents as possible, to have people vote for me, not for a name, but for what I've accomplished, what my goals are. And to do anything less, I think, is disingenuous to the voters, and I think they deserve better.
Yeah. So I know you served 2 terms on the grand jury as part of your civic duty. And I know you worked on issues like, as I recall, the building and planning department of inefficiency, some of the fire safety issues, and the disputed CSD LLAD assessments. So maybe touch a little bit on those. Looking back at the recommendations you had at the time for the building and planning department from 3 years ago, what do you think that they're doing better today? And what do you think that the county needs to still continue to improve on in that area?
Great question. Yes, I love being on the civil grand jury. I would encourage everyone to take a year of their life and give that back to the county that they live in. Right now, in fact, we are recruiting until May, so give that some thought. For me, when I got on the civil grand jury, I had no idea what it was, and it truly changed my life. One way or the other, you will never forget the time you spent on the civil grand jury.
Yes.
The building and planning report was so important because what it did is it took an agency that we had just had an election, in fact, and every candidate had talked about how they were going to change the building and planning department, how bad it was. And we came in and we wrote the report. And what we found was, first of all, there were no measurements. So if you don't have measurements, there's no way to say you're doing a good or a bad job. The second thing we found was that when you submitted your plan, you had to do them yourself. You couldn't upload those, even though like another county, Folsom, would allow you to send them in digitally. And we found that was costing thousands of hours. And I can't tell you how much in cost because you had to replicate it for every division. We found that there was no one assigned to you. So if you were having a problem or just wanted to know the status, there's no way to figure that out. So you'd call and they'd try to look you up, but there was no dashboard, right? And in our report, we really loved the idea of a dashboard where you would come in with your project and then they would assign whatever the divisions are that you needed to go to, like environmental management for a septic system, and everything would be red. And then as you made your way through, everything eventually would turn green and then you'd have your permit. I thought that was something they should have done. And that was in the report. We just really felt more accountability. When you have an inspector who comes out and tells you here are the things you need to do, it should be irrelevant which inspector came out. But sometimes what would happen is they'd send another one, and the other one would have different ideas that may contradict or add to what the first inspector said. So here you were having to once again do more spend more money, take more time. We also found that when you want to put sprinklers in your home, you had to get 2 inspections, one from the building department and then one from, for instance, El Dorado Hills. It had previously been together and you only needed 1 inspector. But they separated those, and we felt that was a bad decision. It cost you
Mhm.
more money. The 2 systems weren't connected, and so you had to re-enter your data. You had to wait again, and El Dorado Hills took a
Yeah.
long time to get to those. So these are just some of the things that we put in there that were really important. I'm sure there were more. If I go get the report, I'm sure there are
Yeah.
more recommendations, but that was the gist
Yeah.
of it.
I mean, do you think it's gotten better in the 3 years, or is that still an area for focus that the county should address?
I do think it's gotten better. If you go to their website, you will see that there are some measurements there. I am still getting from a lot of people their difficulties of getting through their system. Now you
Mhm.
can do a lot of simple permits now that you couldn't. That was another thing we said. Only previously only contractors could do simple permits, and you as a homeowner had to go in yourself. Now you
Yeah.
can do upwards of, I think they told me, 30 different simple permits, like a water heater permit. That really was never the real problem. The real problem was when you wanted to build something or remodel something or start a business and you wanted to open a business. Those projects touched planning. And once you touched planning, then all bets are off as far as how quickly
Mhm.
you were going to get through something. So that
Gotcha.
continues to be the challenge. And I did call and ask them to take me through their conditional use permit process. I spent an hour, and at the end, I still can't tell you what that process is. So I do think there's a lot more opportunity, and I have been saying on the campaign trail, I would like to revise their mission statement to start with the words a customer service organization. And if that is your indeed their mission statement, then everything else that hasn't been working
Yeah.
would change. That needs
Yeah.
to change.
Yep. So when I talk to people throughout the county too about their top of mind concerns, you always hear about fire safety and the cost of insurance. So I know you've been heavily invested in looking into this area. What do you think the county should be doing differently to address insurance availability and wildfire risk?
This is absolutely a top priority for almost everyone I talk to. I've surveyed
Yeah.
more than 200 of my residents, had a little survey when you came to the market and asked you what were your top priorities. And I talked to more than 2,000 residents asking them the same questions because
Yeah.
I'm going to be representing them. I need to be the expert in District 4 on the
Yeah.
board. And so I need to know their top priorities. And 90% of the time, it was homeowners insurance. That's not an opinion, that's a referendum. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
now I cannot, as a supervisor, change homeowners insurance, but here's what we can do. I have 3 prongs to this. The first one is at the local level. We need to continue the education that we have been doing in our county.
Mhm.
I would like to continue to see in your property tax bills something that relates to defensible space and how important it is. That's outreach. We need to continue to fund our fire agencies as we have in the past on certain projects, et cetera. We need to also look at the fire safe councils, which have been going out and getting grants. They used to compete against each other for a grant. They're not going to do that anymore. They're going to go out there, they're going to win their grants, and then they're going to look holistically over the entire county and figure out where to spend that money. Where is it best spent? They also offer free chipping programs, hazardous tree removal programs. If you're a senior, a veteran, or low income, you can get free defensible space work. The tribe has also gotten involved in providing some
Mhm.
of that free work. That should continue and will continue, and I would strongly recommend that. I also think the county should take a position and really encourage Firewise communities and see if there's more that we can advocate for there, because then you will earn discounts. And then besides the Firewise communities and the fire safe councils, we also have the Office of Wildfire Resiliency and Preparedness and Resiliency, sorry, a Whopper. Now that's a really leading organization in the state, quite frankly, because it is
Mhm.
a collaborative agency within the county that brings together all these fire resources like BLM, Bureau of Land Management, the Forest Service, fire agencies, fire district, Cal Fire, whatever agency touches our county for fire, and they get together and they have meetings and they talk about, where are the most hazardous areas? What can we do about that? How can we work together collaboratively? And we have seen progress with the Forest Service in particular and with BLM. So if your land backs up to those, previously there was nothing you could do. You would mitigate your property, and then you would have this mess. Now we have relationships, and we can get that help so that you can have more defensible space for your property. And then lastly, state legislators, we need to look at rural different than urban. We need to have different assistance and help. I know I sent draft legislation to Assemblyman Patterson asking to have homeowners insurance broken into two pieces: regular fire, which is from the inside out, and wildfire, which is from the outside in, and let you as a homeowner decide how much risk you want to take and how much you want to pay. Too often our insurance companies require you to have certain things that you may not want, and you shouldn't have to have those.
Yeah. So for the people that don't know, what are the requirements of a Firewise community?
So a Firewise community, you simply have to have a minimum of 8 contiguous homes. You have to fill out an application that's going to want to know your topography. Is there a lot of slope in your community? What you're trying to do is a baseline. This is a baseline is what your application is. Working with your fire agencies, you then do an assessment just to get a level set. What kind of roofs do you have? What kind of windows? And it's not you personally, it's in aggregate. And then you say, okay, here's where we are. And then you write a 3-year plan that says, here's what our goals are going to be. For the year 1, we're going to do an annual meeting. We're going to all get reflective addresses. We're going to 75% of our homes are going to have reflective addresses, for example. That would be a goal, right? Gutter guards. We want 10% of you to have gutter guards. I mean, you decide for your community a 1-year, a 2-year, and a 3-year plan. Every home in your Firewise community is expected to do 1 hour of defensible space a year, and you collect those in aggregate. So for me, I have 66 homes. We have to do 66 hours. Last year, we did about 1,200. Meeting that criteria is not hard to do. One of us could do enough hours for the whole community. But what you're really doing is you're building community. You're getting to know your neighbors. You're helping those that can't do the work with the work. You're helping them find resources. And bottom line is you're making your neighborhood safer from fire.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about the other bugaboo that everybody's worried about, the budget. I know you highlighted on your website the concerns about budget shortfalls. And so what are some concrete actions that you think we need to take or that you would take if elected in the first 6 months to address the county finances?
Well, the first thing, we have to understand the budget. They have numerous meetings last year about the budget. But what they did is they piecemealed it. And by piecemealing it, we never got a comprehensive overview of the budget. And so for me, I want to make sure I understand what are the reserves, what's in the budget book, and then what's off book. I have been told by the, at the time it was the interim CAO, that there are other accounts off book. I want to know what those are. So then you got a level set. Revenues need to either equal expenses or exceed expenses. Borrowing money to make those balanced, to me, is not a balanced budget. It wouldn't be in my household. I manage my budget on a monthly basis. And so the county should be really more in tune with where things are at. I understand reserves have a purpose. That's fine. But in general, your goal is to have higher revenues than expenses. So what could we look at? I believe in leverage, which means if I spend $1, I want to get $3 back. So how do you do that? Some things in the government, you just have to spend the money. There's no return on those things. Fine. But now you're looking for areas like in economic development. They cut the budget, $500,000 out of the budget so they could, what they term balance the budget. But in doing so, when they voted for that, they never understood the ramifications. And I don't know why that wasn't a requirement. In other words, how much was sales tax going to be affected? Property tax be affected? Transient occupancy be affected? Because you took money that was actively going out and advocating for tourism. We don't have a visitors authority anymore. We have a
Mm.
website, thank goodness, SEED, which is a advisory board to our board of supervisors, took the initiative to go get our website and bring it in-house. So it still exists, but it's not really being managed. Our film commission, we were generating money from the film commissioner, and we are advocating through the visitor authority, and that work's gone. And
Mhm.
we lost the person who was such an expert, such a subject matter expert. So again, I think that was short-sighted. So what are the things that we could do to bring more revenue to this county? Well, I don't think it's housing like we've seen. I have yet to see a report that shows that building subdivisions is a profit center for a county. Because once you take into account all the expenses, the roads, the fire, the police, and all the things that you need to do, um, I have tried to find that. I know that another organization called EGG, the Economic Generator and Germination Fund, is looking into these, and they have yet to find that kind of a report. So if that's not going to be our driving force, then what will be? And I think you go back and say, what makes El Dorado County the county we want to live in? And that is really our rural character, our natural resources. I mean, this is where gold was discovered. That's priceless. You can't put that anywhere else. I don't know if you've ever been on the Rubicon. That is a
Mhm.
world-class off-road adventure of a lifetime. In
Mhm.
fact, 96% of the people that are on the Rubicon, it's like 10,000 vehicles, aren't from our county.
Yeah.
There's a tourist opportunity. And the water agency just conducted a survey where they looked at cell phone data and they pinpointed where you were at in our county. And there was a whole lot of activity, but there was nothing for you to really do where we saw all these people. They might be hiking, but there weren't any hotels or
Right.
campgrounds or other ways for you to stay. And that is the other area, which is what I'm going to call rural tourism. People want to stay on a ranch, they want to stay on a farm, they want to stay there for the weekend with their kids, they want an experience.
Mhm.
We have trails, biking, hiking, whitewater rafting. I mean, you can't have that unless you have the American River, which is just an amazing resource for us.
Yeah.
So let's invest back into those things. Let's figure out how we can do more with those things. And let's figure out how we can be the place where people want to come and play, spend the day, go home, and then we can really generate a lot of revenue for our small businesses as well as for the folks that manage those areas.
So in tapping into our rural assets, it sounds like you would advocate promoting or encouraging businesses that are going to facilitate that, like more hotels. Or I know there's been some concern about people that wanted to expand the wedding industry here, but the costs are kind of prohibitive. Is that part of it? Or do we need to encourage more or make it easier for whitewater rafters businesses to proliferate and expand? I mean, how would you do that? Is it just encouraging the business side of it, or is there more to it?
Well, I think the first thing that we need to do that we have not done is really have an economic development organization in our county.
Mhm.
And their mission is to engage locally with the communities and say, what do you want? Okay.
Mhm.
It will not work for the county to dictate to our communities. Our communities have deep roots. A lot of them have been there generationally.
Mhm.
And whatever we do, we want to do with their input, with their encouragement, right? And so to do that, again, I think we need to reinvest back into our economic development organization. Now, right now, I talked about SEED, which is an organization that's an advisory board. There are some folks on SEED that have such rich knowledge of how to do this. You've got EGG, which also has co-founders of Lauren and Lexi have deep knowledge about our working lands, our agricultural community, and they can take leadership roles. But bottom line is this has to be done in conjunction with, not an exception to, the folks that live in these communities.
Yeah. So I love your idea about raising revenue, and I think that's super important, and there are definitely opportunities. Is there any priority cuts that you feel that should be made that maybe we haven't, or things that maybe the existing board has gotten wrong in letting the budget get a little bit out of control?
Well, I'm on the Taxpayers Association, and we
Yeah.
have been trying to educate the board, not in an adversarial role, and not in any way, shape, or form, but in a educational way to talk about our charter, where we have a requirement, a 504 requirement, passed by voters, and if it's voter approved, then it's sanctioned. Let's
Mm.
keep doing that for our sheriff's deputies to ensure that they are being paid competitively. Public safety is at the top of our list here. We are one of the safest counties. Thank you. We're so happy for the sheriff's department and the fire departments. They do a great job. Keep that up. But we want to make sure that our deputies are paid competitively. And so that's what 504 was meant to be. Then something happened that it morphed into being where you went to, on an annual basis, give another 400 people automatic raises that were linked to, tied to, leveraged to, I don't care what word you want to say, saying that, so, this position has to make more than that position, and the CAO has to make 5% more than the sheriff. Now, if you're in business, there's no such requirement like that. You look at performance,
Yeah.
and you look at what value you're bringing to that job, and different experiences and education, and then you have flexibility on how you're going to pay folks, right?
Yep. And comps from local counties, cities. Yeah.
Right. Right. And so what happened recently, so when I was on the grand jury, we did a report on employee salaries,
Yeah.
and it was used by our unions to
Mhm.
get our salaries actually to median for everyone. For
Yeah.
everyone. We're very proud of that report. And it was the last time we were at median for everyone, top to bottom.
Mhm.
Now what we have is the folks at the top are really close to median, or at median, or maybe a little above median. But the folks that are the rank and file, the folks that answer the phone when you call, they can be as much as 40% away from median.
Mhm.
And, if you give somebody who's making $20 an hour or whatever minimum wage, $25 an hour, and you get 3%, that's probably enough for a cup of coffee, right? As
Yeah.
opposed to if you're at the highest level and you get 3%, that makes a big difference. So I believe we need to go back and we need to look at that area in particular, and take a deep dive on what makes sense, what's fair,
Mhm.
and change the way. There's going to be a short-term impact of some kind, because again, we have these two different approaches, and get it back to what is equitable and fair to all employees in our county.
Yep. Makes sense. So, looking through your website, I saw you say you want to bring back common sense government. What does that mean to you? And can you give an example of where we're not using common sense today?
It's funny. When I talk to people and I say I'm going to bring common sense, no one disputes that. And they all laugh because everybody knows what common sense is, right? I mean, you don't
You would
necessarily
think,
have to
but
define it. But for me, I'll give you an example, and I've already talked about this earlier. When they cut a $500,000 out of the budget and did not have a report that told them how that was going to affect taxes, that was short-sighted. When
Mhm.
when they cut a $500,000 out of the budget, and the person who had the subject matter expertise was no longer going to be funded, that was short-sighted. So that's just a real simple example of what I'm talking
Mhm.
about.
Mhm. Okay. You touched on a little bit about preserving the rural character of El Dorado County and the natural resources we have to offer. How do you balance the rural growth with empowering businesses and cutting through red tape to enable business activity and the growth that's happening still in El Dorado Hills and Cameron Park and balance all that? Because I know that's a big debate, and if we're going to increase revenue, there's a lot of focus on needing to grow more, needing to, maybe encourage a little more development in areas where it's justified according to the specific plan. So
Well,
what's your philosophy there, and how do you guide
okay.
decisions?
I'm not a no growth candidate.
Yeah.
I'm a smart growth candidate. Smart growth means that you have the infrastructure to accommodate what you're going to build. It means you
Hmm.
have an evacuation plan
Hmm.
before fire and before you start to build. Our county has gotten itself in a difficult situation. We have a housing element from the
Hmm.
state. It's a mandate. It says you
Hmm.
need to build this much.
Yep.
And when I was on the advisory board, I was on SEED. It was previously called CEDAC. I was on SEED. And I remember even back then, we would come forth with ideas of how we could address the housing element. And basically, they just cut and pasted it every year from year to year. But at some point, the county, the state says, enough. We were not waiting anymore. And I have seen it down south where they have literally taken over and they're building now. Builders get to build whatever they want based on something called builder's remedy in Willow Glen, San Jose,
Mm-hmm.
because they weren't building enough housing. There's an area that they're going to build a 7-story unimaginable large complex, and there's nothing the neighborhood can do. That's the last thing you wanted to see happen here. We needed to have a plan, meet the numbers, and have as much control as possible before we lost all. So
Yeah.
back to the numbers. We got to look at where county owns property. We got to look at where we can put in infrastructure that's safe for fire, et cetera. And we need to agree on a plan and execute the plan instead of starting every year, spin the wheel. Let's come up with a new plan, spin the wheel. Let's try something else. And over time, we're just not getting there.
Yeah. And do you believe that the developers should fund a lot of this infrastructure development? Is that, and how does that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I believe, at least my understanding is if you're going to build the subdivision and make the profit from the subdivision, then you need to pay what it takes in order to have that. I'm not pleased if EID is going to pass, our water district, EID, is going to pass
Yeah.
along their costs in order to bring more water to barren land so they can build houses. I don't understand why I, who have nothing to do with that area, should be
Yeah.
expected to contribute to that. They
Yeah.
see it as, well, we're all one system. I have a problem with that. And yeah, I do.
Yeah, I know the developers have to pay a facility capacity charge to EID in order to build out some of that infrastructure, but it's hard to, you know, follow the money through that whole process. And I think it does get spread out.
And it shouldn't be. It should never be hard to follow the money.
Yeah.
It's only
Yeah.
hard to follow money when there's a reason why they don't want you to be able to follow it. Back to common sense. One
Yeah.
plus one should always equal 2.
Yeah.
Okay?
And as you know, my grand jury did a financial report and analysis on EID finances, and yeah, found it. Yeah, there was some questions for sure, and I think they're getting a lot better on that, fortunately. But
They are.
okay, so for my frequent listeners in El Dorado Hills, do you have any thoughts on the new Costco and how we're doing at mitigating that impact? I know traffic is probably one of the biggest concerns we have down here with White Rock and still being a 2-lane road,
Right.
for example.
Sure. Costco. Some people love it. Some people feel it's a bad decision. I think the community should have been involved much earlier. It seems to be a common theme
Mhm.
that the public gets involved way late in any of these decisions, and it should
Yeah.
have been involved much earlier. My personal opinion is I would have liked to have seen Costco come up the hill more and not
Mhm.
have been in El Dorado Hills, but it been maybe in some other area, Missouri Flat Road, somewhere in Cameron. I don't really know. I'd have to look at how much land they need, et cetera. And it needs to be near a freeway, obviously, so there's not that
Mhm.
many choices. But I would have preferred Costco to be elsewhere. But it is where it is now, and
Yeah.
so there's not much one can do, as far as I understand, based on what I've seen at the board. So
Yeah. Well, I did a recent interview with John Davey, who is the chair of our APAC, our area planning, and that they provide great early involvement with these complex planning projects and have organized the input. So I think, yeah, a lot of credit is due to that group. I don't think many other counties have that kind of group that can coordinate these responses to like an environmental impact report that's, I think John said it was close to 10,000 pages with all the attachments that they had to analyze. So understanding what is the impact of traffic, what's the impact of the lighting and the surrounding land area, and what is the evacuation policies, and when can trucks and construction come through there and what time. So
all right.
yeah, I think we're lucky to get the community involvement that we do have there. And a plug for the earlier podcast with John Davey, if you're interested in hearing more about that. But let me
Okay.
get back. Let me get back a little bit more to your background, because I know we should touch on. You come like me from the high tech sector. You got a 40-year business background. How do you think that shapes your approach to government? What do you think translates well from the private sector, especially as it relates to common sense and getting things
Sure.
done? And what should the county be doing differently with your
Oh,
experience?
that's a lot packed into a question. I mean, let me just start with my background, because I think it's
Yeah,
important to
please.
understand where someone comes from, because it forms your character.
Yeah.
So I'm originally, everyone eventually can tell quickly that I'm not a native Californian. I think I sound like everyone else, but they tell me I do not. So I'm originally from the south side of Chicago. My dad was a truck driver, and he was a Teamster his home life. My mom
Oh,
stayed home and raised us 4 kids. You know, I was the one shoe kid, right? But my parents saved their money and they sent us all to a Catholic school. It really formed my moral compass, and was one of the best decisions they had made as parents. I ended up at a high school that had just, these are not my headphones, by the way, they're my daughter's. So they keep falling out, but we're just going to make do. So they had just built a new high school, and it had computers, which was unheard of in the early 1980s.
yeah.
And I loved it. I took a class and loved it and said, that's what I was going to do with my life. And being a woman at the time, they had affirmative action programs. And so I qualified to get a scholarship to the Illinois Institute of Technology, which is a top tier 1 school, like the MIT of Illinois. At the time, I had no
Wow.
idea. Had no idea. Could never have afforded it. And a tough school. I mean, really, very few women there as well. But, you know, I have a lot of tenacity, and I made it through, and I graduated, and Hewlett Packard came to our school to hire engineers, and they offered me a job, and with $300 and a job and a dream, I felt like a pioneer. No one in my family had ever graduated college. None of them had left Chicago. And I remember my dad, I asked him, should I go? And he looked at me and he said, you know what? You can always come home. And that was enough. That gave me a sense of no matter what, it would be okay. So I came to California. Like you said, I've been in high tech my entire life. I started as a technical support person. I was the person you called when you had a problem.
Oh,
And I really love problem solving. Anybody who has spent any time with me knows that. I love solving problems. I love your ideas. I love to brainstorm. I'm looking for a solution. And I moved into marketing from there because I wanted more breadth. I opened up new channels of distribution, which what that actually means is I found new ways to sell things. And I left Hewlett Packard with a new distribution channel for computer supplies that's worth billions now. Because every time
no.
you buy a toner cartridge, it's probably through my distribution channel. I got my master's of business administration from Santa Clara. And then I moved into sales, which is where ultimately I spent the rest of my career. I worked at startups. I went to a number of startups, including L'Oreal Space and Communications, where I got a tour of how they make satellites. That was really cool. But when you work for a startup, you really have to be an entrepreneur. You really have to be a jack of all trades. You need to get in there and just make it happen. And I love that. My last job was working for Oracle. I was their number 1 sales director when I left, and I retired. And then what happened from there is I saw the advertisement for the civil grand jury and got involved with that. And then from there, I got involved with, I made that decision that I was going to run. And I decided in order to do that, I needed to get knowledgeable, much more knowledgeable than I was. So I've spent these last 2 years reaching out to the community and getting to know the community. I'm on a lot of boards. I'm a LAFCO commissioner, which looks at land use. We'll be very involved with the potential cityhood of El Dorado Hills. I'm on the Taxpayers Association. We talked about that earlier, about looking at budgets and being the watchdog. I'm a chair of a Firewise community. We touched on that. I'm on the Fire Safe Council for Greater Cameron Park. I've also helped the Shingle Springs Community Center on their board, helped them raise $30,000, renovate their bathrooms from the 1970s. A lot of other nonprofits, which you can see on my website. I'm really very interested in knowing how our county works and how I can help. I help the Shingle Springs Cameron Park Chamber ultimately get their
Mhm.
25,000s in TOT, transient occupancy tax.
Okay, we're back from a brief break due to a technical glitch. But Gina, I was going to ask you, you talked about your experience with LAFCO. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit more about that and tell us about how that affected your perspective on annexation and growth and the role of special districts in the county.
Sure, sure. So LAFCO is a state agency
Yeah.
and they're focused on no sprawl. So they're a regulatory boundary organization and they want to make sure that there are adequate services available.
Hmm.
They don't want any fragmentation of little islands. They're really there to protect land and how it's controlled relative to development. And one of the things they do is they make sure that every 5 years there's service reviews done of the areas, including special districts. Most of the fire districts are special districts, and so they have to conduct a service review to see if they're still able to provide the services adequately. It's a
Hmm.
very detailed report. And for instance, when El Dorado Hills is looking to potentially become a city, all of those materials will go in front of LAFCO because, again, they need to make sure that they can provide the services. And as part of cityhood, it has to be a win win scenario between the county and El Dorado Hills. So that's going to be really important. And that's one of the reasons that I joined. I wanted to become part of LAFCO. I wanted to stay on top of the cityhood issue. I knew it would have a large ramifications for the county as a whole, as well as my district. And they do a lot with fire. They've been thinking about having a fire summit. I know they're looking at all the fire agencies. And I was really proud at one of the last meetings to vote for the annexation of Diamond Springs
Hmm.
and El Dorado Fire. It was a very proud moment. They even had to go get new state legislation passed because of a pension situation. And they just made it happen. And I think it just really is kudos to both teams and what they accomplished.
Awesome. Yeah. So you mentioned cityhood as being one of the primary LAFCO issues if El Dorado
Yeah.
Hills moves ahead with that. For the listeners in El Dorado Hills, do you have any thoughts, pro or against so far? Or can you talk about the process that LAFCO is in now relative to the financial study and the environmental impact stuff that
Well,
you've
that all
experienced?
those need to be done, and they're all
Yeah.
in process. And then,
Yeah.
depending on what they show, certain actions will need to be taken. And if it gets approved through LAFCO, and then it goes to a vote to the residents of El Dorado Hills to make that determination if they want to be a city or not.
Yeah. Um, do you know now when the financial viability study will be done? I guess LAFCO is driving that.
It's in process.
It's
It's
in
in process.
process.
I mean,
Yeah.
it depends on a number of factors: how easy it is to get the data, what the data shows, just how is it all put
Yeah.
together. So
Yeah. We've been a little frustrated down here that there's not more visibility to the process, but maybe nobody knows.
I think it is what it is. I don't know that there's any visibility that we're not having.
Yeah.
You just got to wait till the data comes in, the reports are done, and then it will
Yeah.
be open to the public to peruse.
Awesome. All right. So let's assume you got elected here in this upcoming election. What do you think the next 4 years would look like? What are the metrics that you have for yourself um, that you'd like to get accomplished on this board?
Well, there's a lot to be done. To me, the number one issue is really status quo, the complacency of what we're doing within our county. We need to
Yeah.
re-engage more with our public. I want to see the current January, they've changed the public comment period. You used to be able to comment for 3 minutes on every agenda item, and now you
Hmm.
can only do it once at the beginning of the meeting for 3 minutes. So you're not hearing the presentations, you're not hearing the changes, you're not hearing what the board thinks. And most importantly, you're not able to give them more information that maybe they
Hmm.
really could use in this decision. So
Hmm.
that has to be changed. And I fully
Hmm.
expect in June when it comes back, there will be changes that will really re-engage the public as it should.
Yeah.
Another area that we need to work on is clearly this homeowners insurance. And while we in the county can't do much about homeowners insurance specifically, what we can do and what I want to see happen is that we do a lot more of this defensible space work. We're educating our residents. I want to see in the property tax bills something that talks about defensible space so that everyone has that opportunity to understand where we're at and where there are resources that can help them. I mean, our fire safe councils offer free chipping, free hazardous tree removal, I think up to 2,500. We also have resources that can help you if you're disabled, low income, or a veteran. Our tribe locally is also helping with defensible space. So that's really good. I want to see us strengthen the Office of Wildfire Preparedness and Resiliency. It's a leading edge group in the state, in my opinion, because it's collaborative. It brings in all these additional resources like the Bureau of Land Management, Forest Service, the fire agencies, the fire districts, the conservation, all those groups, so that they are looking at the county holistically.
Mm-hmm.
That needs to continue. And I'd like to see that group do more advocacy to the state as well. I also see that the fire safe councils are no longer going to compete against each other for grants. They're going to go out, they're going to get grants, and then again, they're going to look at where should that money be spent to the benefit of the most in our county, as well as making our county overall safer.
Mm-hmm.
We also need to do more with our state legislators. I know I've been engaging both Senator Marie Alvarado Gill as well as Assemblyman Patterson. I've sent legislation. I'd like to see homeowners insurance be broken into regular fire, which is from the inside out, as well as wildfire, which is from the outside in,
Mm-hmm.
just like earthquake and flood. That those are optional, and you can decide then as a resident and a homeowner how much risk you want to take versus how much you want to pay. So we need to find ways at a state level to give more choice back to us as homeowners relative to our property rights. I'd like to see that happen. We need to get our NAV center finalized. I mean, we're closing it at the end of this month. It's going to take at least a year to have one built. We need to start, stop with our homeless. We need to have a strategy and get that implemented. As well as, for me,
Take 1 second to explain what the NAV Center is for people that don't know.
the navigation center is where homeless people can come and we can help them with resources. Maybe they need access to benefits and they don't know how to apply for them. Maybe they need some medical care. They don't know where to go. Maybe they need mental health services. They don't know where to go. It's really a menu, a smorgasbord of all the resources. And there are a lot of resources available to people that are homeless. And let's get them in the programs. If they need a bus ticket to go back to relatives, I know we've provided that. So it really depends on what your specific circumstance is. And for me, homelessness is an umbrella term. You really need to silo that. And each silo is going to have different needs. And we need to make sure we have programs to address each of those. Housing. We need to have a plan to address the housing element that our state is requiring. The consequence if we don't do that is at some point the state can come in and take over all our zoning. I have seen in Willow Glen, California, they didn't meet their housing element. The state got tired of waiting. And so what they ended up doing is they took over zoning. And now you've got builders that are using something called builder's remedy. And they're building a 7-story apartment complex in the middle of a neighborhood. And there's nothing the residents can do. We don't want to get there.
No.
We don't want to get there. We have time. Let's do an inventory of our county property. Let's look and see where it makes the most sense. Let's make sure we've got the infrastructure. Let's make sure we've got evacuation plans. And let's look at different types of housing. We don't have townhouses here. We don't have starter homes here. We've got seniors that want to downsize, and they don't want to have to move into a gated community with $700 a month homeowner dues. There should be more choices. That would free up their stock. We also need to make it so much simpler to build an accessory dwelling unit in your backyard. We need to not just encourage it, but even look at how we could financially encourage that to happen, because our ADUs now count toward our housing element. So it's a win-win for everyone. So those are, and again, with housing, another umbrella term. Let's silo that and let's find solutions for each of those silos, and then let's implement it. And let's not keep changing it, and starting all over. So, and finally, broadband. We received a $66.5 million grant, and then we cut $500,000 out of the budget. And a lot of those resources in the Economic Development Organization were gone. And there just wasn't the people we needed to implement that. We had 2 years to do that. And it got a little scary that we weren't going to do what we needed to do. Now, I understand, having talked to Building and Planning recently, which is where this resides, that they now have assigned resources. They're back on track. And I'm just really looking forward to that because that's going to change lives. 6 to 8,000 residents are going to have a broadband at a good level, and that can really produce more businesses, better education, better health, just so much. Because as you know, we all rely on broadband
Yes.
for our lives. So those are some of the things that immediately come to mind. More local tourism. I really want to see that happen. We defunded the wagon train, and I think that was a bad decision. The wagon train, we've been funding that for a very, very long time. And it was interesting when I came to California in March of 1983 was when the Queen of Elizabeth of England came here. And what did she want to do? Gary, she wanted to go to where gold was discovered and she wanted to get on the wagon train. So if that's not exciting, we have so much to offer here in
Yeah.
rural tourism, and we need to reinvest. We just really need to invest in that. I think that will also really help our economy. So those are a few things that come to mind.
That's quite a list. Um, do you? I saw your very nice write up in the Village Life today. That looked good.
Oh, I didn't
Do
see
you?
it. Thank you. I have to go look.
Yeah. So, do you have any positioning statements against your other candidates? If somebody was leaning towards another candidate, what would you say to swing them back over to you?
Well, I'll just go back to what we talked about earlier. I have the time. I don't have children. Mine are grown. I don't have a job other than wanting to be supervisor. So I can devote as much time as needed to this. And I will, because people know me, know I'm a really hard worker,
Yeah.
and I work often, all the time. I need to find more downtime, I guess, for balance. But anyway, besides that, I'm your local experience. I'm not Sacramento politics. I understand having experience at the state is important, but not here as much because here, you need to understand how individual lives are being
Hmm.
affected. And you
Hmm.
need to know your communities at that level. You need to go to those pancake breakfasts and all the other events and really listen. And I think that also is something I have been doing for the last couple of years in preparation for this job. I'm, as we mentioned earlier, I'm on a number of important boards, from a
Yeah.
LAFCO commissioner to the Taxpayers Association. I have fire experience for the last number of years, Fire Safe Council, vice chair, as well as the chair of a Firewise community. So I get what's going on in insurance. I don't need to learn. I just need to execute with all the other folks. And let's bring together collaboration in all of those areas, because I'm a big collaborator. I want to hear what you have to say. I want to define the problem with you, and then let's put something in place and measure it for success. So those two come, and I want this job. I'm
Hmm.
not using this as a stepping stone to something else.
Yeah.
I want to do this, and I'm committed to doing this, and I will show up to make this happen. So, that's really important.
Awesome. So, hey, this has been really great. I feel like I know a lot more where you stand on the issues and what you offered in your campaign. Can you tell us a little bit more about where people can go to find more about you, your website, and maybe some upcoming
Sure.
events that you've got where people can meet you in person?
Sure. So a couple things. First, I just want to mention that folks ask, well, how are you going to stay in touch with what's going on in your district? And I just want to reiterate that again, just like Supervisor Parlin, I would continue the monthly newsletter. I'd like to see if we could make it a little more interactive, like maybe a photograph of the month or something. I'm going to continue to go to the events, pancake breakfast, even though some of them don't have pancakes. I don't understand that, but I
Too many
enjoy going to the
carbs.
events. There's so much goodness out there. There's so many people that are just such a pleasure to meet. So I really enjoy those, and I'll continue to do those. I also will have office hours both at the county, and I want to have office hours in district, and I will look to
Yep.
have evening hours every so often as well for those that do work. And I'm going to put together a team of experts that can help educate me and also give me feedback when we're looking to put together ordinances and resolutions. I want to know how these would really affect them. So that's really important. Where you can find more information about me is I have a website, a Posey, Posey, the number 4, supervisor. .com. I also have Facebook, which is again Posey, the number 4, supervisor. We will also be having our next candidate forum at the League of Women Voters on the 30th at the Gold Trail Grange. I think it's 6 o'clock. Hope you'll attend. I think you can zoom in and it
Hmm.
will be recorded. And
Usually.
the recording for the candidate forum, by the way, that took place at the Oddfellows Hall is now online. So you can look at that. Audio is a little strange. Put on closed captioning. That will help you a lot. And then the taxpayers will also be having a forum on May 4th at 7:30 in the morning at Denny's.
Oh,
You can also be on Zoom, and that also will be recorded. So those are some of the places where you can see me. And my meet and greets will also be on my website and on Facebook as I put more of those together.
okay, sounds great. You'll be very busy the next couple of weeks.
I hope to be really busy. I'm going to be at the home show from the 1st to the 3rd. So come stop at the home show at our booth. You'll see me at farmers markets. Some of those are coming up. There's a lot of things going on that I hope to have a presence at, and
Okay.
it's going to be a lot of fun. So,
Okay. Well, I really,
in closing,
yes,
is it closing time now?
we're getting there, but feel free.
No, no, no. Back to you. You're in
Oh,
charge.
oh, sorry. Yes. I want to just thank you again for joining the podcast. I know you're very busy. Again, I feel like we learned a lot more about you, really had a chance to go into the details about your positions, and I hope everybody learned a lot. We'll be following your campaign closely as we move towards Election Day on June 2nd. So good luck to you, and we'll keep in touch.
That sounds great. And so, just in closing, I ask folks to really give some serious thought. Who will protect our rural way of life and who's going to change it forever? I want to protect our rural way of life. I want to fix the problems that we talked about earlier today. I'm your neighbor. I've been here a
Yeah.
long time, but more than that, I really like where we live. I feel very blessed to live here, and I want to do what I can to improve the lives of our people in District 4 as well as in the county. I've talked about all the things that I'm a part of. I am
Hmm.
absolutely local experience. I mean, at Caldor Fire, by the way, I was there at Green Valley Church for a month. Crozier, I'm
Yeah.
making
Yeah.
lunches for
Yeah.
Cal Fire. I am invested in this community, and I will promise you that I will work very hard all the time. And I'm really open to hearing from the folks in my
Yeah.
district as well as in the county. So I hope I will be the right person for you. Honored to have your vote. And even if you're not in my district, I will still vote for everything countywide,
Yeah.
El Dorado Hills through South Lake Tahoe. So find me people in my district and tell them to take a look. I really appreciate that. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Yeah. I know your local knowledge is going to be a big difference, and your involvement in all those programs is going to make a big difference too. So, yep. Again, Gina, thanks a lot and good luck to you. And we'll hope to catch up soon.
Thank you, Gary, so much for taking the time and leading this effort to get this information out about all the candidates.
Yeah. My pleasure. Take care.
Thank you.